This drawing of the rock layers of the Grand Canyon is very similar to many diagrams that you'll find online. If you search for, diagram of Grand Canyon or rock layers of Grand Canyon, you'll find a lot of drawings that look very much like this. So I looked at a lot of different diagrams, and then I kind of hopefully took the best of those ideas and put them into this diagram. So first let's note the location. This is the South Rim area. This is the place that most visitors come to view the canyon. It's kind of in the eastern part. And the top rim of the canyon here is about 7,000 feet or 2,000 meters above the bottom. So that is quite a tall section of canyon, 7,000 feet or 2,000 meters. So if we tried to put a person standing on top of here, it would be almost a microscopic dot. You really wouldn't even a dot might be too large. So that gives you an idea of the scale. It might be helpful to do an image search and find a few pictures like this that shows the layers, and you can find some that are labeled for you. You can actually see the rocks we'll be drawing, or perhaps like this. And you can see the various colors and some of the names. There's the Coconino and the Red Wall and the Kebab. We'll be drawing those. So you can see there's a lot of different colors. This is mainly going to be a pencil drawing. However, I'm going to suggest at the end, if you want to color it, that you just put some color along the edge like this, because this is the edge you would actually see. The drawing on page 101 can help you understand what we're seeing. So this face is here, and so see, we're doing like a cutaway slice. So that's the layers here. It's just that this is in 3 dimensions. It's a little easier to understand, whereas here you just have a 2-dimensional diagram. I think we'll start out by labeling the major geological layers, and the dotted lines here show the divisions between these layers. So let's start at the top. And first we're going to label 2 layers that aren't even here. Kind of seems strange, but there's 2 sections that seem to be missing. And those are the Cenozoic, C-E-N-Z-O-I-C, the Cenozoic. That would be where you'd find all the mammal fossils mainly, although you would find some of the next layers down too. And the next would be the Mesozoic. Now the Mesozoic contains those famous dinosaur layers, although we know there are other things in there. There's clams and birds and things. But these are where the dinosaurs are located. And if you'd like to put those in, right here, if you can fit that in, right really small, Cretaceous, and the Jurassic, and the Triassic. So these are the famous dino layers. And they are missing with the canyon. You are not going to find any dinosaur fossils in the canyon. What you might find right here, sitting on top, now maybe not right here at the ledge, but we're going to put these in anyways. They're a little further away, but it's nice to know that occasionally you may find a butte, which is like a little, I think goes up, has a flat top and down. Now, so these are going to be really large. These could be hundreds of feet or meters tall. These are called buttes, B-U-T-T-E-S. And they would be all that's remaining of the Mesozoic layers. So we can write in this box here. This will be where we write little comments and names and things down here. I was thinking we could use this for fossil notes, this for general notes. So we can write here, write very small, top 2 layers were swept off, eroded away, period. Only a few buttes remain. Now, of course, this is a gross oversimplification of the situation, but basically, in a nutshell, that's it. Okay, so the next section is from here to here, and this is the Permian. Perhaps we could extend this dotted line out here just a little bit. Everything below the Mesozoic, if you want to put a arrow going down, everything below there is part of what we call the Paleozoic. Okay. We have the Permian, and then we have the Pennsylvanian, and this does not mean that it's located in Pennsylvania. Obviously, these layers show up in Pennsylvania, from whence the name, but they are not limited to Pennsylvania. And a lot of times these are layers that have coal in them. Say in Pennsylvania, they might be the coal layers, but here in the canyon we have no coal. And the next one down is Mississippian, Mississippian. Together these are called the Carboniferous layers because they contain carbon, often in the form of coal, but obviously here we don't have any coal. Now the next little section here represented by that is the Devonian. Remember, that's named after Devon in England. Devonian. And then this section here is down to the Cambrian. Cambrian. Now, if you were expecting me to say Silurian or Ordovician, you would have been right, because we have two layers missing. Between here and here, we have no Silurian and no Ordovician. Now remember, I said in the text that there are very few places on Earth where we actually see all the layers. And here's a good example. Why are they not there? Nobody knows. If we had a time machine, we could go back and see. We'd know the answer, but we don't. So we really don't know. All right, so then this dashed line here actually is extremely important. It is right across from this wavy line. You see here the big dark line? And of course, you can't miss the fact that underneath this dark line, these layers are all tipped all funny like this. I asked a geology expert if this was actually true. I said, does this actually look like this? And he basically said, yeah, pretty much it does. So we got these weird angled, chopped off, tipped up blocks here. And the dividing line here, something really weird happened here. Okay, this they call the Great Unconformity. Sounds ominous. The Great Unconformity. Now, anytime there's a strange transition between two layers, they call it an unconformity. And this one is so strange, they call it the Great Unconformity. And then below here, these and this are all these Precambrian. So right along the edge here, Precambrian. And then this label is called the Inner Gorge. A really deep crack. And at the bottom sits the Colorado River. This doesn't look much like a river because it's like a cross section of the river. It'd make more sense in this picture. This would be like the river would be running right along the bottom of the crack. And we only see this little triangular bit. But if you want to label this, I'm just going to put C-O-L. I know that's Colorado R-I-V, river. Colorado River at the bottom. Now that was the easy part. Now we're going to do something a little more difficult. We're going to use this information here at the bottom this key to fill in some patterns right here, and then we're going to write the names of the layers right here. So let's look at the key. We have limestone, which looks like bricks, and the reason that they chose that pattern is because historically limestone has often been used to build buildings. Before we actually had clay bricks, they would use limestone blocks to build buildings such as cathedrals and public buildings. They would use limestone. And of course the dots, that's easy, it looks like sandstone. Shale is little lines because shale is very, very layered. We have shale near my house, and I'm very familiar with shale. This stuff is so layered, it just chips apart into these, it just flakes apart. So these are all the flakes. And then we have cross-bedded sandstone, and when you draw it, if you want to add some little dots to make it look like sandstone, that's okay. The main point is we have these layers of sandstone going different ways, and either maybe water or wind blew sand and made it go in directional and then changed direction or something, and a new stripe came in, and it's called cross-bedding, where we have these different directional layers. And we have granite, which is little marks going all different ways, and we have basalt, which is often called lava, and I guess the little V may be for volcano, maybe where the lava came from. And we have some mudstone in here, which is kind of like clay that turned into rock, and we're just going to use gray for that. Quartzite, and the reason we have little dots here is because quartzite started out as sandstone. Sandstone is sedimentary, and when it gets squeezed and pressed, one thing it can turn into is quartzite. So we have the dots reminding us it was sandstone, and then the little wiggly lines are used very often when we want to indicate something is metamorphic. And we'll see that with schist too. In the next one we've got these wiggly lines for schist. So there we have the wiggly metamorphic lines reminding us that it used to be something else. And then we have this little thing, conglomerate. And conglomerate just means lumps of stuff everywhere. We have little dots and circles and triangles representing pieces of, I don't know, cobbles and sand and pebbles and things like that thrown in there. So those all really make sense. Won't be too difficult to remember them. So let's start up here, and I'm going to really focus in here because we're going to have to draw some really tiny features. This top layer is the famous Hecate limestone. So let's make this look like limestone. Make sure your pencil is pretty sharp here. Sometimes you don't want your pencil sharp, like if you're trying to shade. For this, it really helps. And then we make little bricks. Now obviously these bricks are out of scale, right? These would be like huge 50-foot high bricks. But it's just a pattern and a diagram to show us this is limestone. And let's write its name over here. K-A-I-B-A-B, Kaibab limestone. And if you want to abbreviate limestone, you can just put LM period if you don't want to write it out. And then we'll come back and add the fossils later. Let's just do this for right now. And the next formation is called the Toroweap formation. T-O-R-O-W-E-A-P. And I'm just going to put FM for formation. And this is a Native American word. I don't know what it means, but it sounds kind of cool. Toroweap. We're going to meet another layer on the bottom called the Nankoweap. So weep must be something. It doesn't mean cry. I don't know what it means in Native American, but so that's where the word comes from. It's from one of the tribes that lives out in the area of the Grand Canyon. And this layer looks different in different places. This was very hard to categorize it. In fact, I'm refilming after I learn more, which is why the video kind of looks a little bit different here. Let me show you a picture. Here is a place where we have the kebab at the top. See, here's where you walk around. That's what you walk on usually, is the kebab. And then the Toroweap is kind of angular and dotted with a lot of vegetation. Now on the same search I came up with this picture, and this, though it was also labeled as torweep, you can see this looks like water, which I don't know, I guess it would be the Colorado River, way down or up the canyon, and it's not in the top layer, it's just sitting right here, and actually looks very, very different from the previous picture. And sometimes you'll see various lists of things, sandstone, limestone, shale, all kinds of things. So this layer is very, very confusing. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a number of things. We're going to start with a layer of limestone right under here. Make it thin because we're going to fit several things in here. And then we're going to put a few dots across here like this. That'll represent some sandstone. Maybe not in exactly this spot, but we got it in there. Then a dashed line for shale. Okay, and then leave a blank spot and then put another layer on the bottom as if you're going to do limestone, but make the line slanted like this. And when you do that, that's to indicate dolomite. Now remember, dolomite is very much like limestone. It's just that some magnesium atoms went in and replaced more than half of the calcium atoms in the CaCO3. So you'd have MgCO3. So that's how you draw dolomite. So let's just put in this right here, we're going to write the names of these that we don't have in our key. Gypsum and dolomite. So remember what those things are. Now this is going to be for fossils, but since this has only a few fossils in the top, we'll just use this space to write in gypsum and dolomite so we know what. There's that, and there's on the bottom. Now when we do the next layer, we're going to go back to the old video. This is just a patch I made. I learned more after I filmed the video, and I decided to go back in and correct this and try to make these layers a little more varied than I had in the original. So this might look different when we go on to the coconino sandstone, so you'll know what's happened, but this is right, so just keep this. Don't worry about what the video is going to look like in just a minute. Next we come to another very well-known layer called the coconino sandstone. C-O-C-O, coco, N-I-N-O, Nino, and then I'm going to abbreviate sandstone SS. And then I'm going to write here lots of cross bedding. Again, cross bedding is where we have these layers. Remember down here, let's look at this kind of thing, going different directions. And here's an easy way to do this. I'm going to kind of imagine this in half, or you could do it in three. You just imagine half for a minute and make one go this way for a little while, and then go this way, and go this way, and go this way, and then do that again on the bottom. Now we're not being exactly accurate about which direction these layers go. Remember, this is just symbolic to let us know what's there. Now the next four layers, you'll see they all belong together. They're the Pennsylvanian layers. And so I'm going to make a line here, here, and an arrow from here to here, indicating between these two. And then I'm going to turn the paper and write, it's called the Supai, S-U-P-A-I, or Payee Group. This is a group of four layers that are classified together, and the reason is that we have between and the next layer down is actually another well-known layer. It's called the Hermit Shale. H-E-R-M-I-T, shale. I guess a hermit's like a person that lives all alone in the wilderness. That kind of hermit. Like a hermit crab lives all alone in its shell. And the Hermit Shale is made of shale. And you can see from the key, we have these lines, like this. Now, if we were to make these lines wavy, we're not, but if we were to make these lines wavy, same pattern, but put a little wave to them, that would indicate that the shale have been metamorphized into slate. These are straight because it's just shale. Anything metamorphic happened to them here. I'm kind of overlapping them a little bit, kind of like you do with bricks, but definitely does not have to be perfect. Just any old dashed lines will do. And then under the Hermit Shale, we have a small unconformity. And if you want to kind of make this line look wiggly a little bit, just a little bit. So because there's this unconformity here, this is what helps these get classified together. We actually have another one down here at this dashed line at the bottom of the Pennsylvanian. We find another small unconformity. And so because we have these four layers are kind of classified together between the unconformities. I'm going to put a line here and here. And these four are called the Payee Group. S-U-P-A-I group. And on a lot of diagrams, you won't even see these listed individually. You'll just see them listed as the Payee Group. So it's good to know that name. This one is called the Esplanade, E-S-P-L-A-N-A-D-E. And this is basically a sandstone. You can write SS. Right? And there's, you can, if you want to write unconformity at top, unconform, period, at top. That's good enough. Esplanade sandstone. And then we have three Native American words. The Wescogame, Wes-co, and then like game, G-A-M-E. And this is just called formation, F-M. Wescogame. And the next one is the Manakacha, M-A-N-A-K-A-C-H-A formation. Manakacha formation. And the last one, I love this word, Wadahomigi. Wa-ta-ho-mi-gi. M-I-G-I formation. And of course that's the one where you have the unconformity at the bottom. So what's in these layers? Well, the Esplanade sandstone is basically sandstone. So we can make lots of little dots. But there are a few stripes of other things running through here. In my research, I discovered that these are actually full of stripes of all kinds of things. You'll have 10 feet of sandstone, and then 2 feet of mudstone, and then 3 feet of conglomerate, and then another couple feet of mudstone, and then another 50 feet of sandstone, and on it'll go layer after layer. And you can really see this in these pictures. This is the formation that has so many stripes. See down here, got all these like red stripes running through the canyon. That's going to be that group. So let's put a couple of stripes through here. Some of these might be shale or mudstone, kind of running like that. The shale is often bright red. And here also the Wescogame formation is mostly sandstone. These are probably the kind of hardest, most confusing layers right here. So here. Okay, and again we're going to have some stripy layers of other things running through here. Let's add another little layer here. Maybe this might be siltstone or something. And a lot of these stripes of sandstone in here are actually red. And then the Hecate formation starts out as sandstone at the top. And let's put another little layer in here like this, another stripe. And then we have actually a little bit of limestone. I'm just going to put 2 bars of limestone in here. And maybe I might put another stripe in. These layers are very, very stripy. Again, the red stripes in these layers mainly come from the iron oxide mixed in with the sandstone. And then I'm going to finish off with a little more limestone. I like to do a whole layer first across and then just go between them, going back over. Okay, the last one, the Watahomigi, we're going to go back to some sandstone. Remember, it's a lot more complicated than this. If you think there's a lot of different layers here, if you find an actual list of all the layers, it's amazingly complicated. What order of all the layers? Okay, and then another little striping in here. Something else. And then maybe another layer sandstone, and then we're going to end with limestone on the bottom. So it's kind of like that. Now the other layers do have lots of different stripes of things, but these are the layers where you just really get that kind of red and white stripe look to it. And then let's put limestone on the bottom. So the Payee Group is probably maybe the ones that's easiest to spot. If you're looking across a view of the canyon and you go, oh wow, what's those bright red and white stripes across there? Probably the Payee Group. Now we're ready for another super famous layer, one that you've heard of already, and that is the red wall limestone. Red wall, I'm just going to put LM period, red wall limestone. And interestingly enough, this same layer, we don't call it the red wall limestone, but kind of the Pennsylvanian layer stretches all the way across the US, and when you get to Kentucky, these are the layers where all the mammoth caves are located. So just because that's interesting, maybe we can put a little note here. Same layer as mammoth caves in, I'm just going to put KY for Kentucky. Now if you're outside the US, maybe that's not so interesting to you, but Anyways, Mammoth Cave is very, very famous, even if you don't live in the U.S. And that just shows you how large these layers are. We can have a strip of limestone or sandstone that covers many, many states. And then it might be called different things in different areas, like it's called red wall here, but we can say they're all kind of part of that Mississippian layer, which is why we have these kind of overarching words for these layers. So because it is limestone, we're going to draw a lot of limestone. However, it's a little more complicated. It's not just pure limestone from top to bottom. That's what I thought, and then I did some research, and that's not true. We have a tiny bit of sandstone actually up here underneath this conformity. There we go. And then a little layer of something kind of muddy or shaly like that. And then we've got limestone after that. Better have some limestone if we're calling it that. But towards the bottom here, we actually have another kind of muddy stripe layer. And below that, we have conglomerate. It's the only place where we're actually going to draw it on here. There may be some small areas of conglomerate up here, but this is the only one we're going to bother with. This is where we're going to draw that conglomerate. And then I'm going to go back in and stripe up my limestone there. Just want to do this while I'm thinking of it. Okay. If I'm going too fast for you, you're welcome to just pause. And then at the bottom of the red wall, let's make another little wiggly. Like that. And that wiggly represents those missing layers, actually. And then underneath this red wall, we have the Mauve limestone. M-U-A-V. So it'll also be limestone, and this one we're just going to draw plain limestone. Might be some other minor layers, but we're not going to worry about it here. And this layer is actually slightly different in color from the red wall. The red wall is fairly red, although I'm not sure it's quite as red as those red stripes in the layers above it. There is a lot of red. This one is kind of more, they say, a kind of greenish grayish kind of colored limestone, so it doesn't have as much iron oxide in it. And then this little wedge here, Devonian, actually this one I'm just going to label right here. It's called the Temple Butte. Temple Butte layer. Now it's named after a butte because we're up here we had a butte, so why would you name the layer down here after a butte? But remember, these layers go for a long distance, so way down the canyon in another place, this layer is actually at the surface and there's buttes it has buttes. So one place has buttes, and here it's buried way deep. So the layer was named after the place where you can see the buttes, but here we have it buried. And this is actually made of limestone also. And here's a photograph of this exact place with labels and lines helpfully added, so we can see this is that Temple Butte wedge coming in here. Red wall above, and we'll have limestone down here. So I just thought that was neat to see. It really does look like that. And then underneath the Moab limestone, we have the Bright Angel Shale. Bright Angel Shale. And of course, it will be shale. So we're back to those lines. Now, what's this block, this rectangle sitting there? That is actually a piece of quartzite. You'll notice there's going to be a stripe of quartzite down here. So what's it doing up there? Well, here, I'll show you what it might be doing. It looks very much like it's wedged in there, like these layers of shale were all wet. See, they're kind of folded around here. And this little crumpled pathway looks like possibly the block rose using a process called liquefaction, which is a very well-known phenomenon. It happens a lot in earthquakes and floods and things, where there's a sludgy material here, not just water, but all the sludgy material. Something breaks loose, and then the layers below are squeezed and release a lot of water. It can actually lift something like this. And this thing probably just rose up through those layers and then got stuck and wedged here, kind of pushed this layer up here. And then if these were still at least somewhat soft, then after it was wedged in here, then they got hard. That's just about the only way that you can explain this. And here is the exact location. Here's the block. Here's like some quartzite down here, and here's the shale. And this is very difficult to get to, which is why it's not really a picture you see real often, because this is like a very difficult place to hike up to. These guys are very brave, and it's a bit dangerous. You got to get permission from the park rangers to do it, so it's not really on a public access. But there it is, wedged in there, and I thought that was super interesting, and I just had to put it in my diagram. So we might want to put a little note here what that is. Quartzite block. And then the last layer of our Paleozoic series is called the tapetes, T-A-P, tap, and then eats, E-A-T-S, the tapetes sandstone, S-S. And of course, sandstone. So this is where we can put a note here, possibly. Make this sand. And make this sand. And of course, underneath the tepee sandstone is where we find that great unconformity, where something odd happened. And then we're ready for these. So this will be our schist, and here is schist, and here is schist. And these are usually labeled as granite, although these little lines also can mean, again, igneous intrusion. So Well, why don't we just go ahead and do that, and then we'll get to the layers. Maybe that's easiest to put little tiny marks, random directions. And it really looks like there was magma coming up through here. Here's a place where it kind of got cut off. And this place is where it never came up any higher than that. Or this one got cut off here. Where'd the cut off part go? We don't know. Maybe there's a connection. There's going to be a lava stripe in here. I don't know if there's any connection between that and that. I don't know. And then this is going to be schist, and we're going to use wavy lines. Remember, wavy usually indicates something metamorphic. And schist, as we learned so long ago in a former chapter, schist means a layered metamorphic rock. So you can think schist, think the word sheets. They're flat and layered. It's kind of a bother to do. Might have been easier sandstone, but we're stuck with schist. In some pictures you see that lines don't look super wavy. They're kind of straight-ish, but wavy is for metamorphic. It's hard to make them look wavy and you get this small. Okay. Finish over here. And as long as I'm up here, I'm going to make this. This is actually part of the Bright Angel Shale, I think. I'm going to put some stripes on here. And this would keep going, and you have a little bit of the Mauve limestone up here like this, but we just kind of got cut off right there. So we can write down here at the bottom, why don't we write, this is called the Zoroaster granite. Zoro, Z-O-R-O. Aster granite, and the Vishnu, V-I-S-H-N-U, schist, S-C-H-I-S-T. It's funny because Zoroaster, this is a word from Persia, which is now Iran, way on the other side of the world, and Vishnu is a word from India. So these are not Native American words. They were kind of got brought over from the other side of the world. Okay, so all we're left is labeling these. So I'm going to write their names right here, and then there's kind of a lot of them. You can, as long as they're in the right order, it won't matter if we get them matched up perfectly. I know up here we had nice lines going over, but we're just going to write them in order and then fill them in. The first one's called the 60 mile. I'm just going to write 60 mile. The 60 mile formation, FM, period. So I guess it must run for 60 miles in some direction. This is mainly sandstone. Kind of one of the thicker layers. Then we have some more difficult words. We have the quagunt, K-W-A-G-U-N-T formation. And that is shale, basically. And then we have the Galeros Formation, Galeeros FM Formation. And that's mainly limestone. And then we have the Nankoweap. Nan, Co, Weep, W-E-A-P. This is actually one of the more well-known words because there's another part of the canyon where there's a smaller canyon called the Nankoweap Canyon. And this is an area where people lived a long time ago. They kind of made houses high up in the rock. So that's called the Nankoweap area. But here the layers are buried. And the Nankoweap is mainly sandstone. Then we have the Cardenas lava, C-A-R-D-E-N-A-S, lava. And we can use our little basalt symbol, little V's going in all directions. Make some of them upside down and sideways. And then we have the Dox, D-O-X, sandstone. Pause if you're still working, but I'm going to go on here. And then we've got the Shinumo quartzite, S-H-I-N-U-M-O, well, Shinumo quartzite. Actually, I'm going to perhaps write it overlap like this. I can't quite fit it. Quartzite, that's better. And our symbol for quartzite is basically sand with those little wavy lines. So it makes me wonder, does it have any relationship to the sandstone above it? Is this like, was it part of the same sandstone and then this layer got squeezed and the layer above didn't? Or I don't know. We'll never know for sure. Someone invents a time machine, which I don't think will happen. Okay. Let's put some wavy lines in here. I don't know if they're all supposed to go the same way or not. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And then the other place we find quartzite is right here. If you want to put a little tiny wavy line in there, you can. A couple little dots. Or not. It's up to you. And the next to last layer is called the Hecate or Hecate Shale. H-A-K-A-T-A-I. Hecate Shale. And you know, pattern for shale. And the bottom, since it is the bottom, it's called the base. B-A-S-S. It's not bass, it's base, meaning bottom. The base limestone. And it's limestone. And now we're ready to start up here and go down again and record the fossils. So let's go back here and zoom in on the Kabob limestone again. And I've got some pictures, hopefully, of most of these fossils, or something similar to them. Now, I'm going to just draw my fossil symbols right on top of the patterns. I know it sounds kind of messy, but it actually looks okay when you get it done. It actually will look alright. So I'm going to write here fossils. Make sure your pencil is nice and sharp for this. And in this box, my note's just going to be marine life. Marine means ocean. Now we're not going to have sharks and whales and octopuses and stingrays and things like that. It's going to be pretty simple. We're going to have things like, let's see, bryozoans, which are these kind of nice lacy looking things, and sponges. These are actually from the Kabob limestone. And let me show you some more about bryozoans. Here is a list of what they might look like. Bryozoans are very hard to understand because you can't say, oh, they look exactly like this. They could be lacy, like that one we just saw, look like this one or this one. But then they can look more like a coral. And actually they're kind of similar to coral. If you can kind of put them in that category, think of them as a kind of coral. Those look a lot like staghorn corals to me. And here's another picture of a lacy one. It's kind of hard to imagine it's alive, but that is. It's an actual little animal. So we could have bryozoans, we could have sponges, we could have corals. There's lots of things called crinoids, and here's an actual crinoid fossil from the Kabob, and somebody put their pen point in there to show you how big these things are. So these are kind of tiny. And so when you find something like that, it looks like a little cylinder with stripes, what you're looking at is probably a piece of stem here, a little chunk of stem that broke off. This is the whole fossil with the nice big top to the lily. These are in the same category as the starfish, and the modern crinoids we call sea lilies, and they have this beautiful top part that would have waved in the water, and they have a stem. And here's another picture showing how these stems can be broken. So you're going to see little sections of stems, and those are called crinoids. And of course you have lots and lots of clams, oyster shells, all manner of shelled organisms. There's the pen again to show you how big it is. So what shall we put here? We can just use one symbol because this is kind of a small area, right? So I can draw one crinoid, nice and small, little circle. And there's a guideline in the book. If you need help, you can look at the picture in the book. And how about, I can draw a piece of coral, maybe something that's supposed to look like a bryozoan, and clam. What you can't draw is trilobites. Do not draw a trilobite because the trilobites are not found until the way, way lower layers on the bottom. And then in the Toroweep formation, we have fewer fossils, and I'm not even going to really complicate it since we don't have very many. So I have this layer of gypsum and dolomite. I'm just going to leave it like that. And by the time we get down to the coconino sandstone, we really don't have any good fossils like that. All we have are ripples. Ripples made by wind or water or something. Ripples, wave marks. Some people say they even looks like raindrops. And then we also have some tracks, oddly enough. So I'm going to make it look like something ran across here, like that. We have tracks from things like maybe reptiles or amphibians, but no animals, just tracks. And here are some actual tracks from the Coconino sandstone, showing what they look like. You can even see the little toe areas. Okay, let's see. The Hermit Shale has, I think, still a few tracks. We'll have our animal keep walking down here. Although the way the tracks go, it looks like, now of course isn't the same animal, but put a few more tracks in there. And we don't have ripples here, we have ferns. Oddly enough, that's probably not what you're expecting. We have some ferns. And maybe there's a plant called a horsetail. It's kind of one of those odd fern kind of categories. So we have a couple members of the pine tree family, the conifers in here, mostly ferns, but just plants and tracks. So we'll put ferns and maybe conifers, C-O-N-I-F-E-R-S, conifers, and tracks. And up here, we should have put our note. We have ripples, waves, and tracks. And then here we also have more ferns. Again, simple plant life. And we've got that's ferns, plants, and then in the Weskagame, I read somewhere that in other areas, not right here at the south rim, but if you follow this layer out miles in the other direction, the same layer seems to have some amphibian and reptile fossils. So we could put amphibian, I'm just going to put amphib, and reptile. We'll put a note in other places. In other places, not exactly here, but so I'm not going to draw them in. I'm just going to add this as a note because they're not actually right here anywhere close at all, but I can draw ferns. Now don't cover the whole layer with ferns, right? Just a few is good enough. And maybe some other of these, like they call horsetails, which are kind of like ferns there. And again, in the Manacacha Formation, we also have more ferns. Wow. Ferns, a few other kinds of plants. So what might we have in the Wadahomegi? Can you guess? Since these are all kind of together in the Payee group, they're similar. You've got it. We've got more ferns. However, we also have in some places some tracks. We have ferns, tracks. And now we have a real change. We have this wiggly line telling us there's kind of a real transition here into the red wall. And sure enough, when we get to the red wall, we get marine life again. And this is a place where you have these cool nautiloids, the little things that look like squid stuffed up into ice cream cones. So we can put a few nautiloids in here. Draw a long cone, a little circle, tentacles coming across like that. There. And here's a photograph of an actual nautiloid in the Redwall limestone. Got a shoe here for scale. And it gets a little more narrow down here. I guess maybe this bigger end was where the tentacles came out. So we have nautiloids, N-A-U. T-I-L-O-I-D-S, nautiloids. We also have some clams in here. Different kinds of shelled things. We might have corals. We might have crinoids. And maybe a few little bryozoans here. Okay, so we've got our marine life back. Now, even though we have a wiggly line here, we still continue with some marine shells and things here. Shells, crinoids. And then maybe on the very bottom here, we might start seeing a trilobite or two on the very bottom here. It's possible you might find a trilobite. That will be the first place they really show up, in this location. And across the world, you really do not find trilobites any higher. If you find marine life up here, up in these Permian layers, you're not going to find trilobites. Okay, then we have the Bright Angel Shale, and we have a weird formation. Now, it wouldn't be right above this quartzite block. Okay, I don't know where it would be, somewhere in this formation. I don't know where. We'll just draw it here. Just for convenience, draw a bunch of wiggly lines. And these are going to be burrows. It looks like they were made by worms. Worm burrows. And here is an actual picture of some of these worm burrows from the Bright Angel Shale. Actually, as long as I'm showing things, here is a fern from the Hermit Shale. So let's put in, besides our worm burrows here, we also have some brachiopods in this layer. Brachiopods, and they looked a lot like clams. Kind of like triangular looking things like that. And we also have some ripple marks in this layer. Wavy things in different places, and trilobites. You can do a whole bunch of trilobites. And you can also put a few trilobites down here in the tepee sandstone. Trilobites. And possibly still maybe a few brachiopods or something. That's about it. Nothing much more than that. Now underneath this big great unconformity line, we really only have one type of fossil. And it's none of these that are up here. It's something called a stromatolite. There's a stromatolite. It is a fossilized mat of algae. We could go off the coast of Australia, other places in the world, and we can see stromatolites that are alive and growing. And apparently they look just pretty much like that. So when we see this shape in a rock, we're pretty sure that this is actually these colonies of algae called stromatolites. And I'm glad that the geologists and biologists know what this is, because I would have no idea. If I found a rock that looked like this, I wouldn't know what that was. In fact, there's some formations down here that some geologists think are stromatolites, and other geologists and biologists say, no, they're absolutely not stromatolites. These are just chemical rings, the minerals making rings. So we're going to be a little conservative on this, and we're only going to put them in these top layers. Everyone agrees they're found up here. This is kind of controversial, so we're just going to put them in the top. And you can just make some little rings. This will be very easy. In the sandstone, in the shale. I don't know how many there actually are. There might not be that many, but and the name is stromatolite. Stro, S-T-R-O, mat, M-A-T, and I'm going to use a little hyphen there. Go to the next line. O, L-I-T-E-S, stromatolites. And I'm going to remind myself these are fossilized mats of algae. So one other thing you can do over here, I thought you might want to put just a letter label on these so that you know which goes with which, like 60 and then just like a K, and that way at a glance you can see. And C, I'm just going to write docks, S for Shinimo, H, and B. Now, of course, you don't need to know these or remember these unless you're going to study geology later on. If you are going to go and do geology, you will meet these again, because the Grand Canyon layers are really very famous. They're one of the most studied places on the planet. So, though these sound kind of strange and obscure, all geologists know them. If you want to add a little bit of color, I suggest just doing it along the edge here. And I have a coloring guideline in the book on page 112 that you can use. And I'll just show you quickly how I suggest doing this. Okay, so we start the kebab. It's kind of a grayish. Just kind of a little bit on the edge, because we don't want to cover these patterns or fossils or anything. Kind of a grayish white, and then the next layer, maybe a rusty red, just kind of go like that. And then kind of just fade it off like that. And the next layer is kind of a, as I say, it's kind of a creamy tan or light red or something. Maybe I might, make mine go a little more of a yellowy tan like that. Just a little suggestion. And next one, the Hermit Shale, is actually kind of a reddish. It's one of the colors. It's one of the layers that has a little more color to it. And if you don't have the right color, sometimes you can mix too and put a little red in there, and then mix a little brown with it. Kind of smear them together like that to get what I want. And then the esplanade, this is where you got these red layers in here. Red and white kind of alternating like this. And the color doesn't have to match up exactly with these, but that's where you get all these stripies in the landscape. And then you get down to the red wall. And the red wall is kind of red, but it's not quite as dark. So I don't know, maybe you might want to use pink or light red if you go over it with red, and then mix in some white if you have If you have a white pencil, you can often kind of blend. And then this Temple Butte, I believe also is kind of like a reddy brown. I mean, I'll do that one, kind of a brownish. And if it's not exactly correct, it's okay. Moab is more of a kind of greenish yellow. See, then this one I can kind of, greenish yellow is in my palette, so I can take a kind of a greenish and kind of a yellowish and kind of blend them. And then kind of go over it with a gray and kind of make my own color here, like that. And then this quartzite might be kind of a, I guess in some places it's kind of a purpley, pinkish kind of here. I don't know. Maybe just leave it. I'll make mine kind of pink. And the Bright Angel Shale is, I believe, kind of a reddish. Yeah, it's like a rusty red. So if I don't have rusty red, I can make a rusty red. If you have a set of pencils that has a lot of different colors, you might find the perfect one. But if you don't, you can take a little bit of red and a little bit of brown and kind of mix them together. Sandstone down here, I'll make it kind of tan. And then you can add a color to these along the edge if you want to, or not, it's up to you. Sandstone. This is gray, I think the gray bottom limestone is gray. And quartzite is like pinkish purple maybe. And the Hecate. The Hecate shale is actually kind of reddish. And the schist here would just be kind of like a boring, kind of grayish black maybe. A little bit of brown. So there, I added a little bit of color without covering over any of my layers. That packs a lot of information into one diagram.